After being known as the £1 billion bottle jobs, are Chelsea now a £1 billion success in the making? After a 4-3 win against Spurs with a 2-0 turnaround, that could be in the horizon. Jordan, let's start off with a simple question. Are Chelsea back? From some terrible seasons, are they now back into fighting for titles?
I think we're back. I think we're back. And look, I'm not going to get carried away by any means and say, oh, we're the greatest team in the world. But by every measurable metric in the short term, we are back. And what I mean by that is I look forward to watching Chelsea play football midweek and on a weekend now. That has not been the case for a very long time. You're fearing games. You're fearing big games going, bloody hell, what's going to happen? Are we going to get spanked here? But the love of the game, the love for the team, and the genuine enjoyment of watching Chelsea Football Club is back. So in that sense, yes, we are back. And I think most fans will agree with that. The title challenge we'll obviously get into later in the podcast and we'll have that debate. But right now, I'm loving every minute of it. We'll obviously get onto the Spurs win yesterday, but I think that was a real statement victory or a statement comeback. And you've got to look at the positives right now as a Chelsea fan. I don't want to hear any negativity. Like, we've got the best attack in the league. Yes, we're 4 points behind Liverpool. Yes, they didn't play. We're above Arsenal. You know, we're above Man City. These are teams who you can talk about money, but City have spent more than enough. Arteta, I believe, is close to 600 mil. Correct me if I'm wrong. And we're above these teams in the league. What are we looking for at the end of the day? We're looking for top four. Who's our rivals for top four? What? Spurs, where are you? Bottom half of the league. Newcastle, bottom half of the league. Man United, bottom half of the league. So I think it's a great time to be a Chelsea fan right now. And I'm thoroughly enjoying this. Thoroughly enjoying it.
Reece, what have you made of Chelsea so far? Obviously, Jordan is very optimistic. Are there any sort of doubts you have about them?
Yeah, I mean, I expected them to be around that top four sort of fighting place at the start of the season. I can't remember where I put them to finish anyway, but it's definitely around there. They've got the strength and depth to do that. The way they're managing the cups is very effective, you know, pretty much a different team in each. You know, they've been playing well, they've been scoring goals, you know, and I would argue that Tottenham were probably the big first test for them, because in the games against those bigger sides or the big guns, they hadn't beaten them. So they've gone to Spurs 2-0 down, come back and won 4-3. You can't knock that. However, yes, the problem with modern football is we get carried away over things too quickly. If a player has a stinker on his debut, they write him off. If a player scores in 2 consecutive games, he's the best thing since sliced bread. We have to be careful. Maresca has done a great job. You know, he's had to steady the ship. I think he's handled things very well with letting players go and bringing players in. He's got great depth at his disposal. However, we were saying the same thing, or pundits were, about him at Leicester last season, and let's be honest, how close that came to being a disaster. But he turned it around. That's the important thing. Most clubs would have folded, or most managers would have folded, and he didn't. With a better squad of players, he shouldn't have that issue. However, his record at his first job, Parma, was 28% win percentage, which is a warning sign to me that maybe he's capable of flopping. Not flopping in general, but as in hitting a bit of a brick wall. It's when it comes to the real cutting edge part of the season is when you want to see the real Chelsea. But we can't knock it. The former West Brom man is doing a very good job, isn't he?
Yeah. Like, at the moment, Chelsea second in the table. I think if I asked any Chelsea fan at the start of the season, you'll be second at the start of December, everyone would have snapped your hand. They would have all snapped my hand off. So you've got to say that, and the way that Jordan's speaking about it, they're on cloud 9 kind of vibes at the moment. I think we've got to go into the Spurs game. I think one thing that I mentioned before, I think last podcast, when I was talking about Chelsea being rival for the title to Liverpool, was the defensive mistakes. And that, my boy, was the first, 15 minutes of the game. Cucurella slipping on his arse twice and even trying to blame the kit man for his boots. Jordan, at that 2-0 stage, you have to say you thought you'd fluffed it when you'd seen City drop points and Arsenal drop points.
So yeah, with the Cucurella situation, I was fuming. I'll be honest. You know, to throw a game away, seemingly throw a game away so soon, so early, in against a team who was struggling. I know they beat City, but they were in such a negative mood. They were booing the manager just days before. So to give him a goal and then to give him another goal by something so ridiculous as bad boots, it was infuriating. And as I said, I was so confident in the week that we'd get the win if all being even. It was incredibly frustrating. But thankfully, we did find a way to weather that storm. But in these games, you're right. 9 times out of 10, if you go 2-0 down away to rivals, you're losing the game because you're just going to give them all the momentum. You may go 3-0 down. So absolutely infuriating. The boots are now in the bin if you've seen Cucurella's socials, so thank God for that. But thankfully, in the end, it turned out to be a pivotal moment that gave us, in the end, a bigger win. But you're right. If ultimately we are going to crack on and push for the title, you just can't be doing that thing. You can't be giving big teams 2 goals. You can't be giving teams 1 goal, let alone 2 goals in such a ridiculous format. So, that was frustrating, but somehow we found a way to win. So you've got to take the positives in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, at the end of the day, when you win, you don't worry about it. You don't threat on it as much. But that was just kind of my point from last, like as I said, sort of last week, was just that's the things I think will cost Chelsea actually winning the title. They might be able to push, but I think they've just got. It's not just Cucurella who can make the defensive problems. I see it from quite a lot of your defence. I think they all have a mistake in them, and that's the bit that's worrying, because the saying is like defence wins your titles kind of scenario. So you've said earlier, sort of, like you said, at the moment Chelsea got the best attack in the league. That sort of like that wins your games, not titles, in that sort of way. So if you go 2-0 down to, I think, most other teams, it's going to be a very tough day for you to come back, and you can't keep doing that, because it will just punish you in the end. Sort of like Arsenal had it a few times as well, and that punished them in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, look, the Cucurella thing, the way he's blaming the kit man was pathetic. Like, you've slipped over twice and it's led to 2 goals. And then Spurs made 2 silly mistakes themselves with those penalties. Coming back from 2-0 down is the big thing for Chelsea, because not a chance would Arsenal have come back from 2-0 down. Not a chance. I'm sorry, but that's true. All right. And you've managed to do it. So you've shown already a little bit more character in getting that done. I think you'd kick yourself, by going 2 goals down, and Spurs should kick themselves for giving away 2 very silly penalties. So all in all, you look at that, and the game could have been another score on any other day. But your record against Spurs in the Premier League, Jordan, is a joke. I think it's like, what, you've only lost to them 6 times since the Premier League formed, and you've both been in the Premier League since it started.
Yeah, 3-point lane. 3-point lane is what they used to call it. You've seen Lampard and Terry come out, and it's still true to this day. Some things never change.
It's pretty impressive. For whatever reason, that just happens to be the case. But it's a great result. Like I said, it's not just beating Spurs for Chelsea. It's the wider context of that result.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess it sort of goes well is, who's the key standouts for Chelsea? Because obviously the main one that you've spoke about, and it was shown last year, was Palmer. Now, the only small criticism I have of him is he's getting a lot of penalties. And I did say to you at the end of last season, he can't get that many penalties again. But you are getting quite a lot of penalties still.
Well,
I'm not saying they're right or wrong. I'm not saying you're diving and things like that. I'm just saying you are getting a lot of penalties. So that does add to his sort of tally. But if you deserve the penalties, you deserve the penalties. So it's just sort of like, but apart from that, sort of, who else is impressing you in this Chelsea side?
Yeah, I mean, just on the Palmer point, we've not had remotely close to the penalties we had last season. And I think that's part of the point I do want to say. all the haters wanted to call him a penalty merchant, and then this season he's gone and done it again, and he's gone and broken records. And again, you want to say pens this, pens that. He scored 12 out of 12 penalties. If you don't know, that is now officially a Premier League record. So you can say that, but it takes anyone to watch a game of football to see he is levels above. And I think the benefit that has is that when you've got a player like that who is so calm, so composed, so consistent, it elevates the rest of the team, because they're like, I need to be like that. I need to be at that level. So in terms of who else has impressed me, I think short term, I think Enzo, and that's a less obvious one because, the main one, if I'm being honest, in terms of overall performance, is Caicedo. He is absolutely phenomenal. And if you don't watch a game of football, you're not going to rate him at the end of the day. But we remember last season, he made his debut, he gave away a pen, and everyone lazily kind of went, oh, he's 100 mil, he's given a pen, he's crap. But he is absolutely ridiculously good at football, and he is that guy. You don't want to make comparisons because it gets a bit out of hand, but like each and every week, he's looking a bit more like that kind of Kante guy who's everywhere. You don't want to make those comparisons, it's too early, but at the minute, that's the level he is performing at. If he can continue, he could go down as an all-time great. So I think Caicedo is the biggest one for me. And then more recently, Enzo. I'll hold my hands up. I questioned Enzo Fernandez. Like, there was times, and a lot of people did, but there was a lot of times where you're looking at him going, what do you do? Because you're not a number 8 scoring goals. You're not necessarily a CDM. And again, I think I said it last week on a TikTok, and it's a bit of a joke on Twitter, but since divorcing his wife, he's been one of the best players in the squad. Maybe it's unrelated, but like he's been so good, and he's finally putting his chances away. So yeah, if I had to call out 3 players, I'd say Palmer, Enzo, and Caicedo right now.
Just with the sort of Enzo one, so obviously you're saying before, what does he do in the team? What is he doing differently? Is it just scoring the goals, getting? Because like, I'm not watching Chelsea every game. The stats to me is something like he's got, I think it's like 4 goals, 4 assists, something along them lines. I might not be exactly right. Obviously, like he's playing midweek as well against Noah. Noah, he got 3 assists, and that started his run. So that's good use of the competition to get players into positive sort of frame of mind and continue in good form. But what's he doing differently? Is it just putting the ball in the back of the net, or do you see more from his overall play that you go, right, that's your role for Chelsea going forwards?
Yeah, he's doing both. He previously he just wasn't scoring. He couldn't shoot. Like he literally and I'm not joking, like every time he shot before, I was like, don't shoot, because it's just going to go wide or it's going to be a weak shot. So I did criticize his shooting. And again, I don't know what's changed, but suddenly he's shooting and it's going in the corners and it's going in the back of the net. So that is the one element, obviously. But 2, he's now contributing assists as well. And before, there wasn't as many assists. And I think finally the other thing is, previously he was just getting the ball a lot in deep positions and just pinging it wide, not really progressing with the ball. And it was just a bit, I don't know, it felt a bit basic, a bit boring. But now we're seeing him carry the ball forward, do little 1-2s. And you saw it yesterday for, I think, our 3rd goal. Nice little 1-2, progressing with the ball. And now I'm looking at him going, bloody hell, we're seeing the player who won the World Cup. We're seeing the player who everyone expected for 100 million. So yeah, I think maybe you've got to credit Maresca to some degree for getting that out of him, but he's looking a real player again.
Reece, what have you made of the sort of, well, the two of the players that you mentioned all now, the £100 million men in midfield?
Yeah.
Now, £100 million, I think we can agree at the time was an overpayment. If they step up and perform at this sort of level, they can be worth the money. What have you made of them this season, Reece?
Yeah, I mean, like, as it's sort of honing in on what I said earlier, we have a habit of jumping too quickly with footballers and understanding that they need to develop, they need time to gel and settle. Look, they're still not worth the £100 million each that were paid for them at this moment in time, but they're flourishing. We're seeing, Enzo perform guaranteed, 7 out of 10 every game, I think. And if I've noticed that if he's having a good game, we're all talking about it. But we notice no one's saying anything about having a bad game, which implies that he's doing something right. So if you're not talking about him, he's doing something right. I think he is a good player. I think he's very creative, and I think he's also getting goals as well. And I think he's showing leadership. Caicedo, I think, is an amazing passer of the ball, and we're seeing that, and it's working. And it's all about giving players time. And of course, now that the whole price tag thing has faded away and all of that stuff, it's probably given them a clearer head as well to play. But just building on what he's saying, I was impressed with Jadon Sancho last night. I thought he played very well, and I believed it was a good signing at the time. I think Pedro Neto deserves a lot of credit. I think if he stays fit, he's keeping Madueke out the team. I really rate Pedro Neto. I think he's a great player, and I think he could be key, when you attack. So yeah, I think just throwing in those two names into the ring as well is definitely worth a shout. You got to spend money to be successful in football now, and Chelsea have spent money on those players, and they're doing all right.
Yeah, you do. I think you do, and it was something I was thinking about. It's kind of like, even though Chelsea had bad 2 years, you were never worried they were going to actually get relegated. I know at times they performed like they were a relegation side, but they weren't actually going to get relegated. And you knew if they spent money, they could build towards something that will get you back into the top 4 race, challenging for FA Cups, League Cups, which you were getting into finals anyway still. So it is kind of, money does talk. One thing I wanted to say before we sort of wrap up and make a bold sort of prediction on the league is Carragher's comment of saying Palmer's been the best player in the Premier League, at least for the past 18 months. I've seen him get a lot of stick off Liverpool fans for this, and they took his quote out of context. But is there anyone who's close to Palmer at the moment in the Premier League for the past 18 months?
And look, yeah, in terms of the Carragher's kind of point around Palmer, I mean, look, you've got to address the fact that this guy was absolutely slating us all of pre-season. I've remembered, fans certainly haven't forgotten. So I think the fact that Carragher's now turned a fanboy is absolute credit to Maresca in this Chelsea side, because he seems to have done a bit of a U-turn. And look, the point around Palmer, I think if we're honest with ourselves in terms of a player who's had a bigger impact and had more output in the last 18 months since his sort of Chelsea debut, I don't think there is anyone on that level. And I don't mean that, I'm not saying he's by far and away the best player in the Premier League, make no mistake, but he is operating on a different level right now. And he's breaking records almost every 2 weeks at this stage. So, yes, obviously there's players close in terms of, Salah, consistency, Haaland out, Foden had a great season last season. So there is players who are close, but I don't think there's anyone who's had a more impactful 18 months, in my honest opinion. So I do think Carragher's actually right on this point.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there's been nobody better than Palmer over these last 18 months in that position. But everyone seems to be acting that Chelsea have unearthed this hidden gem. Like, we knew he was a good player. It just, he wasn't going to play all the time for City. He probably would now with the injury issues they've got. But the way he played, he scored a wonderful goal in the Community Shield, for his last game, or I think that was his last game. But we knew if he was going to fit the Chelsea style perfectly. If anything, he was coming in as the best player in that squad at the time. So he's been fantastic, but it's not a shock that he's been this good.
Yeah, I mean, it's been I think his output, like his level of record-breaking success, I think has shocked people. But it's no surprise that he's a good footballer. Like I said at the time, I've still got the receipts on WhatsApp. I was buzzing about the signing at the time. For £40 million, it was a great bit of business, and City made a mistake letting him go. I called that at the time. Did I think he could break these levels of records? No, I didn't. But you watch him play, and it's just beautiful to watch him play. And he doesn't feel the pressure. And it's such a joy to have a player like that.
yeah, sort of. I'm saying it from the City point of view. His output's gone above what we'd have expected from him. But like I said to you at the time when we sold him, it was because we'd just come off a treble win season. Grealish was playing very, very well. Mahrez we had in the squad. We had Foden there who was ahead of him in the pecking order, and we brought in Jeremy Doku, who is a completely different footballer to Palmer in terms of what he brings to a team and what Palmer does. Palmer's was more against Grealish, Mahrez, and Foden, and at that point he was fourth choice, and then we had a different type of winger in Doku, so he was nearly like fifth choice. So that's why we sold him, and we didn't expect him to do this well. And a lot of City accounts have gone like, we've made that mistake, but it's sort of like we've kind of, I think in our City sort of mind, we've kind of gone, you know what, Chelsea did it when they got rid of De Bruyne and Salah. To be perfectly honest, it's just our turn to make that mistake, and it happens.
Yeah,
But yeah, he's been very good. But moving back on to Chelsea, and I think our final point is, can they actually win the league? We'll come to you first, Reese. Can they win the league? They're 4 points off Liverpool. Liverpool do have a game in hand, but can they actually do it?
I mean, until mathematically, no. Until mathematically, yes, they can. I don't think they will. I always believe you can't win a league with kids. And I do at the moment see very similar to vibes when Emery joined Arsenal. They got off to that sort of rough start and then went on an unbelievable run, and then it all fell apart towards the end. Potentially that might happen to Chelsea, depending on the type of games they're in, those high pressure games. Because at the moment, there's not a high pressure game. It's not. So it's going to be interesting to see how they navigate that. But at the moment, Chelsea are in a position to take advantage of City's decline, United being nowhere near it, Spurs being up and down like a yo-yo, and Arsenal, well, doesn't matter about them anyway. But so it's only Liverpool that's in their way, and Liverpool will have to come through the same tests as well. But I still don't think Chelsea will win it. I think give them top four. If you'd have offered them top four, they would have taken it. And I think that's still the goal at the moment in time.
Yeah, before we get on to Jordan, because he can have his sort of more he can have his more optimistic views about Chelsea, of course. I would go they can win it, but I don't think they will. And it's more for the defensive issues that I've mentioned, the mistakes. I just see it happening probably a bit too often. They'll not. It's not like they're never going to keep a clean sheet. It's just meaning sometimes these Cucurella sort of type mistakes will cost them games, and I think that matters in the title race. Plus, their last four games, they have Liverpool at home, United at home, Newcastle away, and then Forest away. You don't want that as your final few games if you're in a tight title race running. You want fixtures where no one's got anything to play for, and I think they're too tough to be having them. I know you got to play everyone twice, but you want easier games towards the end so you can reel off a few wins to get over the line. But go on, Jordan, take it away. What do you think?
I mean, can we win it? I'm going to say yes, but do I realistically believe it will happen? No. Look, City have been bad. Arsenal are kind of there or thereabouts, but we're to rely on three very, very good teams to all continue to slide, and for us to not slide, it just seems so unlikely, realistically. And as you said, this is with a couple of points we've not mentioned. Like, we are literally talking about the youngest squad in the Premier League by a mile. To your point, Reese, kids don't win titles. I think it's so unfathomable that City are going to continue at this rate. There's going to be a bounce back from City. Arsenal, again, they're only 2 points, behind us at the end of the day. We've seen they can go and get a 90-plus point season. I mean, the bullish case is that, look at Liverpool. Liverpool are in the same boat as us. You could argue, on a bit of a new manager bounce, things are going well, but, there is cracks there. Similar with us, as you said, you both said it. Defensively, there is issues. There is still question marks over Sanchez. We all know that. We still saw that yesterday. So is it realistic? No. But at the end of the day, until proven otherwise, I think you've got to say we're in the title race. We've got a nice run of fixtures. Things are going our way, starting to get big wins. So look, you never know. Football is a crazy game. But I'm here to enjoy the ride. So I'm happy either way.
Absolutely. So there we have it. Everyone let us know, Chelsea fans, Liverpool fans, Arsenal, City fans. Do you think Chelsea can go and win it this season? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and like. It helps out the channel. See you next time.